This is probably one of my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. Let's do it. American Psycho is about this wealthy businessman named Patrick Bateman. During the day, Patrick works in mergers and acquisitions at this company called Pierce & Pierce. But we never see him do any work. Instead, he spends his days going to these fancy lunches with his coworkers. They obsess over which restaurants they're going to go to and if they can get reservations. Patrick also obsesses over his physical appearance and his skincare routine. We hear about it in great detail. And we get this incredible monologue about how you can look at me and think I'm normal and you can shake my hand and feel flesh, but underneath, I am not there. But Patrick has these dark impulses that at least at first he's able to somewhat control. That is, until we get our iconic business card scene. Patrick and some of his coworkers are comparing business cards one day and he is absolutely devastated when they all prefer Paul Allen's card over his. So Patrick spirals, and that night we see him brutally kill a homeless man and his dog. And this is the turning point where his sanity starts to completely slip. We see Patrick's jealousy of Paul Allen growing, especially when he learns that Paul can get a reservation at Dorsia, which Patrick never can. So Patrick makes dinner plans one night with Paul. Paul, who this whole time has been confusing Patrick as somebody named Marcus Halberstram. And we see that's a theme throughout the movie, like nobody knows who each other is. Because nobody's paying attention to the individual. They're too concerned with material things and their place in society. And they all look, dress, and act the same. So Patrick and Paul go to dinner where Paul proceeds to talk about that loser, Patrick Bateman. And they go back to Patrick's apartment where we notice that there's newspapers all over the floor. But Paul doesn't really pay attention to that. And Patrick plays and dances along to Huey Lewis and the News as he kills Paul with an axe. Fun fact, the biggest part of the budget in this movie went to getting the rights to all the music they play. So Patrick drags Paul's body out in a garment bag. It's very obviously a body. And somebody sees them but is too distracted wondering who the designer of the bag is to notice the blood coming out of it. So Patrick takes Paul's key and goes to his apartment and is horrified to learn that it's nicer than his. And he also leaves a message on Paul's voicemail pretending to be him, saying that he went away to London. So some time goes by and eventually Patrick is visited by Detective Kimball, who is investigating Paul Allen's disappearance, but of course Patrick denies knowing anything. One night Patrick picks up this sex worker named Christy, who he brings home, and he hires another sex worker, Sabrina, to come spend the night with them as well. At this sex scene montage where Patrick just literally stares at himself in the mirror the whole time because obviously to him, nobody's hotter than Patrick Bateman. We don't see exactly what happens, but we see Patrick looking at these tools and telling the girls we're not finished yet. And a little while later, he pays them as they leave bleeding and clearly in pain. One of Patrick's coworkers, Louis Carruthers, shows him his business card one day, which absolutely sets Patrick off. He goes to kill Louis in the bathroom, but Louis takes this as a sexual advance. He kisses Patrick and is like, thank God, I've always wanted this too. And this horrifies and disgusts Patrick so much to the point where it saves Lewis's life. He flees, he panics, he's terrified of Louis. We see that Patrick's bloodlust is just becoming uncontrollable. Like he'll take a woman home from a club and we don't see him kill her, but the next day he'll have a lock of her hair. We've also seen that Patrick's secretary Jean has a massive crush on him and one night he invites her to dinner. He stands behind her with a nail gun contemplating killing her, but ultimately he's able to control himself and tells her to leave. During this scene, Jean is also completely unaware that we, the audience, see a severed head in his freezer. Throughout this, Kimball is becoming more and more suspicious of Patrick. He tries to get Patrick to pinpoint his whereabouts on the night of Paul Allen's disappearance, which obviously Patrick can't really do because he's the one that did it. But then Kimball is like, well, this guy said that you were in Atlantis with him and some other guys. And that confirms to Kimball that Patrick didn't do it. He couldn't have. But in reality, this guy probably mistook somebody else for Patrick Bateman because nobody knows who the fuck anybody is. So Patrick's relieved and he's like, oh great, let's go celebrate and kill a girl. So that night he picks up Christy again. The two of them and this girl Elizabeth go back to Paul Allen's apartment. So they all do their thing, but as Christy's going to leave, she watches Patrick attack Elizabeth. And as she's running out in a panic, she sees all these bodies, just limbs, heads, torsos everywhere. Eventually, she's finally able to make it out of the apartment. Patrick chases her in nothing but his sneakers and a chainsaw, and eventually he kills her with it. Patrick, who, by the way, this whole time has been engaged to this woman named Evelyn, he obviously fucking hates her, and eventually he breaks up with her. And that night, he has an absolute psychotic break. His mask of sanity has been slipping this whole movie, and now it's completely slipped. Patrick is at an ATM and he sees a message come across it that says, "Feed me a stray cat." So he goes to do so, and when a woman tries to stop him, he turns around and shoots her. And thus begins this insane crime spree where Patrick just kills a bunch of people and flees from the police and explodes a police car by accident in the process. Now, eventually he hides in his office building and he makes a call to his lawyer where he leaves him a voicemail making a full confession. This scene is so iconic, but ultimately he confesses to 40 or more murders. He doesn't even know. He can't keep track anymore. He goes so far as to tell him he's even eaten some of the bodies. He ends the call with saying, yeah, maybe I'm crazy, but I'll be out and about, so keep your eyes open. The next day, Patrick goes back to Paul Allen's apartment, which we know is where he's hiding a bunch of his bodies. He's surprised when he finds it vacant and sees people in there with a realtor. And the realtor tells Patrick that he should leave, which he does. Now, there is one scene in this whole movie that Patrick Bateman is not in, and it's this one. Because we see Jean at his office and he's not there, and she finds this appointment book that just has sketches of just really sadistic shit. Now, Patrick ends up going to meet his coworkers for lunch, and he sees his lawyer that he left the confession to last night. But when he approaches his lawyer, he's like, oh yeah, that was hilarious. And he mistakes Patrick for somebody else. And he's like, yeah, I might have believed that voicemail if you said it was anybody else but Bateman. Like, he's a bitch. He couldn't do any of those things. Patrick is frustrated at this point, and he's like, it's me. I'm Patrick. I did all those things. I killed Paul Allen, and I liked it. His lawyer's like, that's not possible, because I just had lunch with Paul Allen in London last week. Patrick goes back to sit with his coworkers and wonders if any of his crimes even really happened. We get a final monologue explaining how he does not wish for a better world for anyone. He was hoping that his confession would give him some sort of consequence or something that would make him feel anything, but that didn't happen, so this confession has meant nothing, and the movie ends.